I bet you thought I was going to be singing that song from Imagine Dragons, didn't you? Am I getting that obvious? Well, let's dive into some Rosamund Pike and the Amazon Prime Video Radioactive. Sound good? This is the story of Marie Curie and her discovery of 2 new elements and the effects of those discoveries. Rosamund Pike stars as the groundbreaking scientist Marie Curie, and she delivers a pretty good performance. I've always been a fan of Rosamund Pike, so I was very curious to see what she would bring to this historical figure. Curie lived such a huge life with a lot of scientific impact. It also appears that she had her fair share of drama in her personal life. This film feels like it didn't exactly know what to focus on in her vast story. As a result of that, much of Curie is shown through a very shallow lens. We don't get much information on her other than to piece together small bits of info through lines of dialogue here and there. And for a lot of the film, we don't get to hear and therefore understand what's really going into her scientific research. We see her mixing and crushing and boiling stuff, but come on, anybody that's gone through a high school chem class has done something like that. And I'm quite certain I never discovered anything new other than maybe how to piss off the teacher by burning things or blowing stuff up. It really would have been nice to hear more about her discoveries and how she came about them and the processes that she was going through to get to these discoveries. Because as it is, you just all of a sudden, we see her toiling away with no words, just mixing stuff and scooping it and breaking it and holding up beakers. And, you know, it's just this montage of action over and over again. And then all of a sudden, we've discovered it. Probably some of the most interesting parts of her story come towards the end of the film. We actually get some story development into her actions and what she's doing, what she's developing, and we get to see her tick. We get to see her interact finally in meaningful ways other than just short little lines of dialogue. I mean, it's really a shame that they waited so long to get to a lot of the meat of the narrative. But from what we do get, I really appreciate Pike's spunk that she brings to Curie. She's strong, she's confident, super intelligent, and I'm really curious at how much of it is historically accurate, especially when it comes to her standing up against chauvinism and criticism. I like that the filmmakers took some chances when it came to some of the storytelling. They chose to use some flash forwards in order to kind of show us what could come about as a result of Curie's discoveries. I wish though that it wouldn't have been so clunky in its execution. At times it was kind of abrupt, and it also didn't always build totally on the narrative that they were telling. It was almost kind of like an aside, like it was, an afterthought, like, this would be cool if we did this, let's put that in. Some of the filming looks like you gave a camcorder to a 9-year-old next door who has a drinking problem. I mean, it's shaky, it's abrupt, it zigzags, it doesn't make a lot of sense in certain aspects. Like you would see just like the camera move in really short ways, and as I'm watching myself, I feel like I'm Chris Farley in Tommy Boy. Anyway, that's me, and that's an aside. That's stupid, but anyway, let's continue on. Now, to geek out a little bit in some of the technicalities, normally there is a vignette that is placed on most films. And what that is that's that little black area or dark colored area around the corners of the frame. And what that does is that it just draws your eye more into what's in the center of the frame. It's actually present in quite a lot of films and even TV shows, but it's subtle, and so you don't really notice that it's there. In this, it's inconsistent on how they use it. Sometimes it's barely there, sometimes it's not even there at all. Other times it's so dark and so bold that it's almost obscuring some of the characters. Now, in one instance, if they're using that as an effect and an aesthetic to kind of give it this old-timey feel because this is taking place in the late 1800s and early 1900s, then that kind of works. But the inconsistency, even between scenes, I mean, as we're just moving from scene to scene or within a certain scene and they change camera angles, it appears and it disappears and it changes in its vibrancy. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it became distracting to me. To go on with that aesthetic thing that I think they might have been going with, sometimes they use like a soft focus or a blurry effect on the lens, and it does work through some of it. Other times it's kind of distracting as well because nothing is totally in focus and you get some really harsh lights coming through, which make it even harder to see what's going on in the action. Even that is inconsistent in its usage. Not all the time do we have this soft focus. I mean, sometimes even within the scene, as it cuts to different areas of that scene, it changes back and forth. And it's almost like they wanted to try a whole bunch of different things. Like they thought this was really cool. What if we did this or what if we did that? But then they had a decision-making filmmaking disability and couldn't decide which one to use, so they just said, let's do all of them. Now, the coloring choices that they use throughout this are interesting too. I really like the green that they use for the radium. It has this glow stick-like effect that it goes on, and it really works for me. I thought it was kind of cool, especially when they use some other aspects of kind of a dream sequence that Curie's character goes into, where we see certain things change color. And I liked that effect. I thought it was pretty cool. And even then when they would marry some really bright colors with soft focus, it gave it another antique type of feel. That it was a little different. It was something they were experimenting with. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. There were also some scenes though that just went into the weird realm, and it felt like the filmmakers were playing a little too much with the green fairy, if you know what I mean. I really like what the film was trying to do, but I'm not terribly impressed with the execution. At almost a 2-hour runtime, there were parts of it that were very engaging, and other parts were downright boring. I mean, one thing I can say is that it is great that this is coming to Amazon Prime, that I didn't have to pay for it to see it in the theater, and I also didn't even have to pay for it to rent it on demand. So in that instance, I'm kind of seeing it for free because I already have Amazon Prime, so I'm not really out anything other than some time. Rosamund Pike does a great job for what she's given. It's just a shame that there are so many inconsistencies in the story and that they were trying to pack too much in, which didn't allow them to really focus on aspects of her character and aspects of her story to really draw that out, because I think that would have been the most meat of the entire narrative and really engaged us all the way through. Like I said, towards the end of the film, where we actually begin to see more and more of her and her in action, and we get to understand what it is that she's doing and some of her accomplishments and her discoveries and what they lead to, that becomes the most interesting part of the film. There's no profanity, but some sex, nudity, and violent imagery. I give Radioactive 2 out of 5 couches. What's a good historical biopic that you could recommend? One of my personal favorites is Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln. That dude just totally disappeared into his character, and it was spectacular. But I'd love to know your suggestion in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me. I'm waking up, I feel it in my bones, enough to make my system blow. Welcome to the new age, to the new age. Welcome to the new age, the new age. Radioactive, radioactive. I couldn't resist. I'm a moron and I don't even know how many of the lyrics I actually got right. See ya.